think of the biggest names in post-colonial theory. And one name you simply cannot miss is Gayatri Chakravorty Spivak. Born in 1942, she is an Indian-American scholar, translator and feminist critic who has shaped the very language of post-colonial studies. Today, she is a university professor at Columbia University and the founder of its Institute for Comparative Literature and Society. Her work is so globally recognized that she received the Kyoto Prize in 2012 for speaking for the humanities against intellectual colonialism and the Padma Bhushan in 2013 for her contributions to literature and education. Pause here and note this. Spivak first rose to prominence with her translation of Jacques Derrida's Of Bromatology. Her long introduction to that book became a critical text in its own right. She is also celebrated for her translations of Mahasweta Devi, especially Imaginary Maps and Breast Stories, asked in exam, and for essays like The Politics of Translation and her rendering of Devi's Tanadayini, asked in exam. Now here's something that has been repeatedly asked in exam, Spivak's landmark essay, Three Women's Texts and a Critique of Imperialism, published in 1985. In it, she studied Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, Jean Rhys's White Sargasso Sea, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, showing how gender, class, and empire intersect in literature. But her most famous and debated essay is Can the Subaltern Speak?, published in 1988, asked in exam. Here, she borrowed Antonio Gramsci's term subaltern, meaning marginalized groups without access to power, and asked a haunting question. When colonial and patriarchal systems silence these groups, can they ever truly speak? Reflecting on the absence of voices around the practice of sati, Spivak argued that intellectuals often reproduce the same silencing they claim to resist. She pointed out that the other of Europe is treated as nameless, voiceless, and without subjectivity. This connected her directly to the Subaltern Studies collective, which critiqued nationalist histories for ignoring peasants and women. Asked in exam. In her later book, A Critique of Post-Colonial Reason from 1999, Spivak extended her analysis to European philosophers like Kant and Hegel. She showed how they excluded the subaltern from the category of the fully human. Here she introduced the idea of sanctioned ignorance, the deliberate dismissal of other knowledges, which keeps colonial patterns alive. Can you recall another of her key terms? It's strategic essentialism. Spivak used this to describe how marginalized groups can temporarily adopt a simplified identity like womanhood or the oppressed to unite for collective political action. Even though these identities are not absolute, they can be useful for building solidarity. She later distanced herself from how others misuse the term, but it remains an important tool in feminist and post-colonial debates. Through books like In Other Worlds and essays such as How the Heritage of Post-Colonial Studies Thinks Colonialism Today, Spivak has shown how deconstruction can be globalized and feminized. She constantly reminds us that giving voice to the oppressed is never simple. It requires questioning the very frameworks of power that silence them. So, when you think of Gayatri Spivak, remember these anchors. Translation of Derrida, Mahasweta Devi's stories, Three Women's Texts, Can the Subaltern Speak?, A Critique of Post-Colonial Reason, and Strategic Essentialism. Each one is crucial and several have been asked in exam. That's all for this session. The other parts we've already covered in the Indian Writing in English section, so you can always go back and revisit that. In fact, I'll make it easier for you. I'll attach the video from that session right after this one. Don't miss it. It's an important discussion you should definitely check out. I'll also be adding the PDFs and the PYQs after the videos, so you can go through them at your own pace. Everything has been neatly organized in the app. If you haven't downloaded it yet, I'll share the Google Play Store link. You'll get access to over 5,000 PYQs, complete PDF notes, and my personal favorite, the last-minute revision points. So yes, that's all for today. In our next session, we'll dive into postmodernism. Until then, thank you so much and have a wonderful day.